Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. Today we'll be focused on the lives of some of the Carolina's finest emergency services personnel. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Good morning. Welcome back to Carolina People. This morning we're in Florence visiting with the City of Florence Fire Chief at Fire Station 1, Joe Robertson. Joe, thanks for being with us.
Rick. Thank you. Appreciate
Absolutely.
you.
Please tell us a little bit about Fire Station 1.
Well, it was constructed in 1949. It is our oldest fire station. It houses multiple number of apparatus. It houses the shift commander's vehicle, first out engine company directly behind you, responds on most calls in the city, an aerial ladder company, and that's about it. We have our code enforcement officers here and our training coordinator's office.
And you said it was built in 1949?
1949, yes.
Is that right?
Still doing a good job for us.
How long have you been in Florence, Captain Robertson?
I've been in Florence since March of '97.
Okay, and you've been fire chief since then?
Yes, sir, I have.
Is that right? Where were you from, the Carolinas originally?
Yes, sir. I'm originally from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I was a deputy fire chief there when I retired with about 31 years service.
31-year service, and
yes,
so you had virtually since birth have been in.
Yeah, I've been in the fire service a long time.
That's amazing. Well, as you know, this week we're visiting with some of the Carolina's finest emergency services personnel. To be in Florence today, serve in such a wide area. It's how many fire stations are physically located in the city?
We have 4 fire stations in the city, geographically located so that they can respond quickly to any emergency in the city quickly.
Okay, great. How about some of the interaction? As you know, we are now, today's Monday, September 9th. We are almost a year since the tragic terrorist attacks on our nation. Are there events over the last, or experiences over the last year that have caused you to not only to remember what happened a year ago, but have caused you to think about the future and how the City of Florence is dealing now in an emergency response in a way that would deal with emergencies such as we exhibited a year ago?
Yeah, I think so, Greg, and I think actually it goes back beyond the World Trade Center event. We here in Florence have been trying to be very proactive in the fire service since I arrived here 5 years ago. We've been sending all of our officers and personnel to weapons of mass destruction school in various locations. We've been training hazmat technicians, and this has just been enhanced since the World Trade Center disaster. We've enhanced that type training to do training that better prepares us for bioterrorism events, right, and weapons of mass destruction type events. Our training coordinator is very well versed in weapons of mass destruction, hazmat technician, hazmat operations requirements for the fire service, and does a lot of training for us in that area.
When you think of the events a year ago, is there any overarching image that just sticks out in your mind when you think about it?
Well, I guess seeing the towers on fire and the aircraft hitting the towers is the real part that really gets to me, and that this could happen in our country right on our own soil, a terrorist event like this.
Absolutely. Do you think there is a best way today, going forward, from a firefighting perspective, that we can deal with future threats of terrorism?
Yes, I do, and I think it takes involvement of the entire community, not just emergency service personnel, but everyone in the community needs to get involved and stay involved in doing things to prevent terrorism. Report weird things to the police and to your community emergency services personnel.
Okay. Any other ways?
Well, they can get involved in programs throughout the city here. We have various large structures and properties, schools and so forth, that are vulnerable to terrorist attacks. Mm-hmm. And those officials that run those facilities need to get involved in better evacuation planning and planning for events like this if it were to happen, and coordinate them with the local emergency officials.
Golly, well, that's a heck of a lot to do. So virtually anyone who's watching, anyone in the community, whatever community they're from, whether they're in Robertson County or in Horry County, there are events within their communities and activities they could do that would be very similar, not only in Florence County or in the city of Florence, but in all communities.
Yes, sir. They just need to call their local emergency planning committee or their emergency management director or their police or fire chief and say, what can I do? I want to get involved, and we'll find plenty for them to do.
How many other fire stations did you say were located in the city?
We have 3 other stations located in the city.
Do y'all ever have visitors come in and check out the fire stations? If for instance, I was a school teacher, if I wanted to bring a class in, is that possible? Or?
Sure. That's the primary focus of our job, and most emergency services personnel job is to educate the public about, in our particular case, fire safety, and we do that well when we have groups touring the station. We can show them how we respond, what we respond to, and what we'll do when we get there, what we'll look like when we get there so we don't scare young children.
Absolutely.
And some of the problems that we run across so that they can help us prevent them by practicing good fire safety habits.
Well, you know, it's so amazing when you think about everything, when you go through the steps of what happens when that call comes and when the folks are getting ready to take off, just everything when they arrive on the scene as quick as possible, to have to assess the situation, and then to next think about how they're going to save lives if lives are potentially at stake. So
There's a lot to do, and I think the very first thing that folks need to do is remember, call 911 right away. Don't wait. Get some help on the way. Don't try to handle the situation yourself, whatever it is, whether it's a terrorism event, a fire, or a mugging, or whatever. Get some help on the way. Call 911. We immediately get a dispatch. We're out of the building in less than a minute, and we're on the way, as well as police and other emergency workers.
Absolutely. Chief Robertson, can you sit around a couple more minutes and talk to us?
Be glad to. Thank you.
We'll be right back with more Carolina People. Welcome back to Carolina People. This morning we're in Florence at Fire Station 1 visiting with the Fire Chief, Joe Robertson. Again, Joe, thanks for being with us.
Quite welcome, Greg. Appreciate the invite.
Joe, it's as virtually a year later today, the 9th of September, as we think through all the events that have happened, there's so many things that go on through all of our minds. And I know I wanted to see in particular, I know we've talked about this earlier, but if there anything when you think of images, in your mind, are there images that other firefighters here in the department that they think of that have really stuck out in your mind as folks have talked to you, things that really make you think about what you're doing as a true public servant,
I think probably the major thing that sticks out in my mind, of course, you know, we lost a lot of fire service personnel and police personnel and emergency workers at the World Trade Center, and that sticks in my mind, as well as other citizens. But my primary focus is protecting citizens and firefighters, and I think that's the major thing that sticks in my mind from my personnel is safety.
Safety.
Practice safety, help us be safe doing our job. We've got one of the most hazardous professions in the world, and yet we've got to be safe, try to be safe doing it. Provide good emergency response equipment, vehicles, apparatus, protective clothing, and breathing apparatus, and protect them against the unknown as much as possible. And I think that's our major focus, is protect them against the unknown if possible.
Absolutely. When we think about Chief Robertson, one of the important things for folks who aren't involved in fire safety or in fire prevention, we always wonder how folks in that profession can what type of person is needed to possibly get into fire safety or get into fire prevention or get into firefighting. Are there characteristics that you look for, or just anyone who's willing to volunteer?
Yeah, well, I think, Greg, to answer that question, I think the best process is to get good, dedicated people that have they've got a goal up here and they want to reach that goal, and that's to help the public, be safe. Mm-hmm. And when you've got a person like that, you can instill the other values and character traits that we try to do in the city to encourage people to do a good job for the public.
That's wonderful. Chief Robertson, what do you do in the morning to prepare for the day?
Good cup of coffee first thing, read my newspaper and watch the news. Watch your show a lot too.
Well, thank you.
Do that and get me ready for the day. See what's been happening around me before I get to work.
Is there more cross-training that has come about over the last 12 months between departments and focused on any potential terrorist attacks, whether large or small, in communities?
Oh, absolutely. And it's locally, we work with the police department, emergency management officials in the city and the county, our public works department. All the other departments are intricately involved. You see us a lot on the news and at fire scenes and disaster scenes, but we've got a tremendous support blanket. Emergency management from city and county, public works, Red Cross, Salvation Army. These groups, it's important to have their support.
Absolutely. When we think about calling to action, whether we're talking with public service officials in whatever community we're in, or we're talking to charitable organizations, when we think of a call to action, we're asking organizations, how do people who want to volunteer, how do people who want to donate money, how do they get involved? When we talk about firefighting and everything that goes involved there, the most important number that you stress commonly, whether it's to children or to adults, is to call
911.
Call 911.
Get that call in, get some help on the way, get some trained professionals on the way to help you.
Absolutely.
Don't try to handle it yourself.
Yeah, so many folks want to do that.
Yes, and it delays our response and our ability to handle the situation and make it or mitigate it quicker.
Mm-hmm. Chief Robertson, who inspires you?
I think my brother-in-law inspired me to get in the fire service. He was a 30-year career firefighter back in North Carolina, and he inspired me to get involved in the fire service.
Is there, 1 year later, I'm trying to think what we're doing and what should we be doing going forward?
Well, I think one of the things we need to do is continue doing what we're doing. We're changing society. We're changing organization. My organization or our organization are changing organization. We need to change to stay fresh, to keep up to date with what's going on around us. And I hate to say it, but terrorism is going on around us, has gone on around us, as you know, and we've got to maintain our focus on protecting the public and our workers against terrorism threats. And so we've got to enhance our training and our focus to that effect.
Mm-hmm. Growing up in the Carolinas, obviously you said you grew up in Chapel Hill?
Yes, sir.
North Carolina?
Yes, sir.
And you've been in firefighting for?
37 years, fire and police.
Had you been a police officer before?
About 7 years, yes.
Is that right?
Yes,
in Chapel Hill as well?
Yes, sir.
Golly. Well, that is... were there anything that you garnered from your services as a law enforcement officer that enabled better potential services
Sure,
as a
I think so.
firefighter?
And I think it's to remain calm at the scene and to provide for the security of personnel, your own personnel, and the public. You know, you learn to set up incident command systems and to manage people, your people as well as the citizens, to protect them both.
That probably works very well for cross-training.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir, it does.
Let me ask you real quick, we got about 30 seconds, but I was wondering, if you were not the chief of the city of Florence, what do you think you'd be doing?
I'd be in the fire service somewhere. I don't know where. I'd maybe in a consulting role or as a fire service official of some type. I'd still be in the fire service somewhere doing something. I like the work.
Absolutely. Visiting with Chief Joe Robertson, Chief of the City of Florence. We're here at Fire Station 1 on East Palmetto Street. Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate the invitation.
Hope to get you back. We'll be back with more Carolina People coming up next. Good morning. Welcome back to Carolina People. This week we're visiting with some of the Carolina's finest emergency services personnel. And today we're at Fire Station 1 on East Palmetto Street, visiting with the Florence City Police Chief. Thanks for being with us, Chief Shells.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Anson Shells. Chief Shells, are you a Florence native?
No, I'm not. I'm originally from Columbia. I was in Columbia for 21 years before coming to Florence. I spent 15 years with the Richland County Sheriff's Department, and the last 3 of those years I was a region commander for the lower Richland area before being appointed as the police chief for the city of Florence.
What do you think made you choose law enforcement as a profession?
Well, I suppose my inspiration would have been my uncle. I had an uncle in law enforcement a number of years ago, and as a child I was always impressed with the occupation, and I majored in criminal justice at the University of South Carolina, and subsequently entered into the field of law enforcement.
Okay. As Chief of Police, what is your main responsibility?
I'm responsible for the operations and the administration of the police department, and overall for the welfare and the security of the citizens of Florence, as well as for the security and welfare of all of the visitors to our city.
How many offices, how many law enforcement officers are there in the city?
We have an authorized strength of 99 sworn Class 1 police officers and 7 sworn Class 3 police officers, bringing the total number to 106.
106?
106 sworn officers.
Okay.
We also have 17 authorized positions for civilian employees. Those are our support personnel, such as our administrative staff and records and telecommunications.
Okay. When you think of the events that have happened a year ago, and obviously the time that's elapsed since then, is there any overarching image in your mind from the events a year ago?
Yes, for me, it would be the day that we actually saw those towers come down. We all saw it on television, and some of us actually got to see it live. And we were in a staff meeting, as a matter of fact, at the City County Complex when the news of the planes crashing into the towers came to us. We turned the television on and we watched the events as they took place, and the overall feeling that I got, and I'm sure many of us in law enforcement and any emergency services area share the same feeling, and that feeling was a sense of helplessness at watching those events unfold before our eyes, watching all those people die that we really could not help at that time.
For folks who sacrifice their lives on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I'm talking about both the citizens and the firefighters and the police officers.
Absolutely.
Of course, we didn't know until after the event had happened, and until after the wreckage had somewhat, I suppose, cleared. That we found out exactly who all had died in that tragedy. But any death, especially of this nature, is a tragedy, and that's what really sticks out with me.
For viewers wanting to know, there's so many training programs that are already in existence, both in law enforcement, whether it's in the police department or in the sheriff's department within a county or a city. Are there training programs that have changed since the events of?
Well, actually, we were in the process of obtaining training in weapons of mass destruction before the September the 11th attacks. It just so happened that the attacks came shortly after some of our officers had received that training. We have always trained in emergency response tactics. Our emergency response team, which is called our ERT team, has always trained for emergency events, those events that rise above what the regular patrol officer can handle. And since, actually even before September the 11th, our ERT team was trained with the Sheriff's Department's ERT team, just in an effort to work together. And actually, since the attacks, we've enhanced working together. We train more together, as a matter of fact.
So that almost answers the next question of how the city has come together as a whole to work more closely.
Actually, I believe the city of Florence has always worked closely together. We have an emergency operations center that is set up in the event that we have a major emergency, such as a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake or something of a mass nature. And simply to say that, the city has started to work together, I think would be incorrect. The city has always worked together well. The fire department and police department, we've always had a good relationship. In fact, what we've done is simply enhanced our working relationship. We've also expanded, not only working with the city offices, but also with our county offices as well in emergency response.
And you said 106 law enforcement officers, and then you said quite a few volunteers or civilians.
Civilian employees. Like I said, these are our support personnel. These people handle our records management, administration, and mainly administrative matters.
I was reading about something in the city of Florence, and it had to do with law enforcement. Is there a multi-task or a multi-agency task force?
Shortly after the attacks of September the 11th, the U.S. Attorney's Office initiated what we call a multi-agency task force. It involves all of the local law enforcement agencies, the police department, the Sheriff's Department and SLED, and all of our federal agencies, the FBI, the DEA, and ATF, and all the other, like I said, federal agencies. Shortly after the attacks, the task force met on a regular basis, pretty much monthly, disseminating information, sharing information, and just in an attempt to make sure that we are prepared just in case we receive more information on a possible terrorist attack. Since the anthrax scares have subsided, there have not been regular meetings of the task force, but there are sporadic meetings, and we're always in contact with each other, prepared to meet in the event that an emergency does arise.
On a local level or on a statewide level.
Exactly.
I'm sure.
We're all in this together. When we talk about terrorism, either domestic or foreign, there's no such thing as jurisdiction as far as I'm concerned. We all are sworn to serve and protect our citizens, regardless of where they are.
Those are great words, and that ties into exactly how you think our lives and our country have changed over the last year.
The terrorism, in a way, is sort of an art. The objective of terrorism is to instill fear in a population, and also in this particular case, I imagine their objective, one of them was to instill fear. One of the other objectives was to disrupt our country financially, and I imagine there are other things that they were expecting to happen. But one thing I'm sure they didn't expect to happen was that this act of terrorism, this despicable act, would unite this country in the way that I think it has been united. There was such a tremendous show of unity, I know, in Florence after this thing happened, and that spirit has not died. It's still around. You don't see the flags flying like you used to, but I promise you, on September the 11th, you'll see a bunch of flags in Florence.
Very definitely.
That's one thing I'm very proud of about this city. It's the city's level of patriotism.
It shows. Driving around now, and I'm sure it will over the next couple days. We've only got a few seconds, but I was wondering if there's any accomplishment in the past year that you're the most proud of.
We have, yes, I am. We have started a security program for the city-county complex, one that did not exist before September the 11th. The officers that work security for the complex are what we call Class 3 officers, which is a new position in the city of Florence. It's not a lesser level of police officer, but it is a limited duty law enforcement classification, which it keeps us from bringing officers off of the street to provide security. So I'm proud of the fact that we were able to create a new division out of this and to be able to provide enhanced security for the city-county complex.
Today, visiting with Chief Anson Shells, Police Chief for the City of Florence Police Department, 16 years in law enforcement, a year and a half as Chief of Police here. Thanks for being with us, Chief Shells.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll be back with more Carolina People coming up next. Thank you for tuning in to Carolina People this morning. We truly want to thank our host, Fire Station #1 here in the city of Florence.